The road ended where the mist began. Beyond it, the world felt older, like time itself refused to move forward. The forest leaned in close, whispering in a language that wasn't made for human ears. I'd come here chasing a story about an untouched village that performed a ritual no outsider had ever survived. Now, standing before the carved wooden gate, my camera trembling in my hands, I wondered if the warnings had been superstition or prophecy. Every compass I owned had stopped spinning. My phone showed no signal, no map, no trace of the world I knew. The villagers watched from doorways, their faces half hidden behind smoke and candlelight. Someone whispered my name, though I hadn't told anyone who I was. Then a single bell rang from the hills, and all of the villagers knelt as one. The air turned colder. My breath fogged. And from the mist ahead, a man in gray robes stepped forward. The village air felt wrong. Too quiet, too cold, like the wind had been told to stop. They led me down a path lined with lanterns carved from bone. Each flame hissed when I passed, bending toward me as if drawn by breath. My camera lens fogged over again and again. The people wouldn't meet my eyes. When I asked about the ritual, Elier said only that it wasn't meant to be seen, only witnessed. That word clung to me. Witnessed, not filmed, not survived. They brought me to an inn built from blackened timber, its walls carved with unreadable sigils. The air inside was thick with smoke and herbs. A young girl served me tea without a word, her hands trembling so badly that half of it spilled. Outside, the wind carried faint chants. When I looked through the window, every villager was facing the same direction, the forest. That night, I couldn't sleep. The floorboards pulsed faintly beneath me, like a heartbeat. My recording equipment clicked on by itself. I watched the footage I'd taken earlier, and saw something behind me that hadn't been there before. A tall, pale figure standing in the fog, watching from the edge of the forest. Just before dawn, a single knock echoed at my door. I opened it to find a folded note, damp with dew. Inside, one sentence. "If you stay past sunset, you belong to it." My hands shook as I looked out toward the forest. The mist was thicker now, swirling like breath from a sleeping giant. Somewhere in it, a bell began to toll again. Morning came without light. The sun never rose, just a dull gray glow pressing through the fog. The villagers moved silently, sweeping the streets with bundles of dried herbs. Every window was sealed with wax. I tried to ask questions, but their mouths barely opened. Elier appeared again, his robe now marked with streaks of red clay. He said the ritual would begin tonight, and that I had already been chosen to stand in the inner circle. My throat tightened. I hadn't agreed to anything. Yet when I checked my car, the tires were slashed, the road gone beneath the mist. Just blank. Endless white. By midday, the entire village was gathering near a hollow at the edge of the forest. Drums sounded from somewhere deep within the trees. Slow, deliberate like a heartbeat. The air grew colder with every beat. I caught a glimpse of Mira watching me from a doorway. Her lips moved silently, forming words I couldn't hear. When she raised her sleeve, I saw fresh cuts along her wrist, shaped like the same spirals carved into the village gates. The village square became a stage of silence. Every villager formed two perfect circles, an inner and an outer ring, around a blackened altar of stone. Elier motioned for me to enter. The villagers' eyes followed me as I stepped forward, camera trembling in my hands. I tried to film, but the lens refused to focus. Every frame blurred, as if light itself bent away from the altar. The drums stopped. Then, without a signal, all the villagers began humming the same low, bone-deep tone. When the humming ceased, Elier spoke words that didn't sound human. The villagers responded, their voices merging into a single tone that vibrated through my chest. My ears rang. My vision dimmed. The stone beneath my feet pulsed like a living heart. Something shifted beneath the altar. A faint, wet sound, like movement under the ground. Elior's eyes found mine, and he smiled for the first time. After the ritual song ended, Mira found me again, this time in the old church ruins on the hill. She said the ritual wasn't about worship. It was about containment. The Pale One wasn't their god. It was their prisoner. But every 100 years, it demanded an outsider to renew the binding. That's why no one ever left. My blood ran cold. Outside, the bells began to toll again. Faster now. Mira pressed a small silver pendant into my palm. She whispered, "When it calls your name, don't answer." The fog grew heavier as night fell. The forest around the village seemed to breathe, its branches swaying though no wind touched them. I tried to leave, again, but every path looped back to the same gate. My GPS spun uselessly. From the trees, faint whispers began repeating my own voice, words I hadn't spoken aloud since I arrived. Then torches lit up across the valley, one by one, forming a burning circle of light around the village. The ritual had begun. The villagers gathered in the square again, chanting in a language that sounded like stones grinding together. Mira stood apart, trembling. She kept glancing toward me, her eyes pleading. Elior stood at the center, his robe now soaked through with what looked like blood. He raised his staff, and the air thickened with a metallic taste. Every torch flared blue. The ground beneath the altar began to crack, releasing a faint, sulphurous mist. Something ancient was waking. The earth split open. From the crack came a low hum, vibrating through bone, not air. Elior began reciting names, one after another, and each villager he named collapsed, as if their strength was being pulled downward. I stumbled backward, covering my ears, but the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside me. When he spoke my name, my vision blurred white. For a moment, I saw something vast beneath the ground, pale and still, its shape shifting like smoke. Mira dragged me away as the chanting broke into screams. We ran toward the hills, but the fog moved faster, thick as a living thing. Every sound behind us twisted into echoes of our own footsteps. Mira gasped that the ritual couldn't be stopped, only completed. I demanded to know how. She turned, eyes wet with fear, and said, "Someone must take its memory." Then, from the fog behind us, Elior's voice echoed, soft, almost kind, calling my name again. We reached the old bridge at the edge of the village, the only way out. Beneath it, the river boiled, black and silent. I could see the faint shimmer of dawn on the horizon, though no warmth reached us. Mira stopped and pressed the pendant against my chest. She said if I left now, it would follow me forever. If I stayed, I might never die. Behind us, the chanting began again, faster, louder, as the ground trembled. I looked down at the pendant. It pulsed once, like a heartbeat. The night shattered into sound. Bells clanged from unseen towers as the fog thickened into a solid wall. Mira and I ran back toward the square. There was nowhere else to go. The air stank of ash and salt. Every villager stood motionless now, eyes rolled white, mouths open in silent screams. Elior hovered near the altar, his skin gray as stone, his voice layered with others that weren't his. The ground pulsed like a heart beneath us, alive and angry. I knew then the ritual wasn't summoning anything. It was waking it up. I raised my camera again. Instinct, habit, denial. And through the lens, reality fractured. The villagers' faces twisted into dozens of versions of themselves, layered and flickering like old film. I zoomed toward Elior, and for one impossible second, I saw what was speaking through him. It wasn't human. A pale, endless shape that bent the air around it. My heart stuttered. The camera shut itself off. When I looked up, Elior was staring directly at me, smiling as though the thing behind his eyes recognized me. Mira screamed my name and pulled me toward the altar as cracks spread through the ground. She said the only way to end it was to seal the breach. But it demanded a memory strong enough to anchor it. Before I could respond, Elia raised his staff and slammed it down. The sound tore the air open like fabric. From the rift rose a shape, tall, faceless, and made of fog so dense it glowed. The Pale One had come. Every breath froze in my chest. Or nature or it came down. It's you all. It didn't move like anything alive. The Pale One glided, soundless, its edges flickering as though it existed halfway between moments. Every instinct screamed to run, but my body refused to obey. Mira pressed the pendant into my palm again, shouting that I had to remember. Then Elier turned to her, his voice now hollow and doubled, saying, "Only one survives." Before I could reach her, the Pale One's hand passed through her chest like mist. Her body turned to ash in an instant. I didn't even have time to scream. "Work the next day, and it was sore. It's sortisis aristocracy." The silence afterward was worse than the noise. I fell to my knees, Mira's pendant still glowing faintly in my hand. Elier approached, his voice almost gentle now. He said the ritual required memory. Mine. And that once I took it, I'd never leave. The Pale One loomed behind him, its form rippling in rhythm with my heartbeat. I looked at my camera on the ground. Its lens was cracked, but the red recording light blinked. I picked it up. If I was to remember, the world would remember too. The Pale One reached toward me. Its hand like smoke turned solid. I couldn't breathe. Every sound fell away until only my heartbeat remained. Slow, thunderous, and raw. Elier whispered that once the memory was taken, the world would be safe for another century. I didn't want to be part of their curse, but the air itself pressed down, demanding surrender. Then the fog parted to reveal the forest edge glowing red, as if dawn had come too early. I realized it wasn't dawn. It was blood seeping through the ground. The moment its hand touched my skin, the world vanished. I saw flashes. Villagers through centuries performing the same ritual, each ending with an outsider's scream. I saw Mira alive again, running through the forest decades before I was born. I saw Elier kneeling as a young man, begging the Pale One for forgiveness. Time folded in on itself, looping endlessly. My body felt weightless, but my mind burned with memories that weren't mine. Then I saw something worse. The Pale One turning toward the camera, still recording on the ground. I woke to silence. The square was empty, the fog thinning as pale sunlight broke through. Elier was gone. The villagers lay motionless, their robes empty, just piles of dust. Only the altar remained, its stones slick with condensation that smelled faintly of iron. The pendant still pulsed in my hand. My camera light blinked once and died. Somewhere in the forest, I heard a single long exhale, as if the mountain itself was finally asleep. But I knew better. Sleep didn't mean safety. It meant waiting. I buried what was left of Mira beneath the old tree near the church. The soil was soft, the roots warm, as if alive. I whispered that she was free now, but the words tasted hollow. The pendant had stopped pulsing. Yet when I closed my eyes, I saw flashes. Mira's face, Elier's voice, the Pale One's hand stretching through time itself. I knew the curse hadn't ended. It had only changed shape. The villagers might be gone, but their ritual lived inside me now. As I walked down the mountain trail, the mist began to clear for the first time. My car was still there, untouched, waiting. When I turned the key, the engine started on the first try. For a moment, I thought I had made it, but in the rear-view mirror, through the thinning fog, I saw figures standing at the edge of the village. Hundreds of them, pale and silent, watching. At the very center stood Elier, smiling faintly. The pale one's reflection lingered in my mirror even after the road turned. I drove until the mountains disappeared behind me, but the silence followed. The radio flickered with static, whispering fragments of the chant I'd heard in the village. Every town I passed looked normal. Children laughing, smoke rising from chimneys, but no one looked at me. It was as if I wasn't really there. When I checked my camera, the files were gone. Only one remained. A single still frame of the pale one, its shape faint, as though hiding between pixels. And behind it, my own reflection, smiling back when I hadn't. By the third day, sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the ritual again. The villagers kneeling, Myra reaching out, Elier whispering. Only one survives. My reflection began moving a split second out of sync. When I spoke, it smiled before I did. In hotel mirrors, its mouth would stay open long after I stopped talking. I smashed them all, but the sound of shattering glass didn't bring relief. It brought laughter. I tried to warn someone. At a gas station, I told the clerk what happened, showed him the pendant. His face went blank. He said they'd been waiting for me. The words froze my blood. Behind him, the TV switched channels on its own. Static resolving into an image of the village, still covered in fog. The altar whole again. The broadcast time read tomorrow. I ran out before he could finish his sentence. But as I left, every car alarm in the lot went off at once. That night, I camped near a river to clear my head. The forest was quiet, but the air felt wrong again. Too heavy, too still. I set the pendant beside me, its silver surface reflecting the firelight. When I looked closer, the reflection showed a dozen villagers standing behind me. I turned around. Nothing. But when I faced the pendant again, their faces were closer, eyes hollow, mouths open. Then Elier's voice echoed from the trees, softer now, almost kind. It remembers you, Ava. When dawn came, the fog was waiting for me again. It seeped through the forest, silent and deliberate, curling around the tent until the light dimmed to gray. I tried to run, but the air grew thick as water. I could feel something pulling at my mind, tugging on memories. Mira's voice, the mountain bells, the whisper that promised survival. I fell to my knees, clutching the pendant, screaming for it to stop. The last thing I heard before the world faded was my own voice answering from inside the fog. I remember. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the forest anymore. I was standing in the village square again, but everything was still. The air hung frozen, torches suspended mid-flicker, ash unmoving. My breath came out in slow, perfect clouds, though I felt no heartbeat. The altar stood untouched, freshly carved, as if centuries hadn't passed. A single figure stood before it. Mine. She turned slowly, her eyes calm, her face unreadable. I realized I wasn't looking at my reflection anymore. I was looking at what I'd become. The second me spoke first, though her lips barely moved. She said the ritual never ends. It only shifts its keeper. Elier had been the last, and now it was my turn. I tried to deny it, but every thought I had echoed twice, her voice completing it before I could. When I looked around, I saw the villagers frozen in place, eyes fixed on me. As I stared one by one, they began to move again. Slowly, reverently, bowing their heads in unison. I felt the air thicken with recognition. From the shadows, Elier emerged, unchanged, as if centuries had passed for him in a breath. He looked at me and smiled the same sad smile Mira once did. He said my memory had been accepted, that the Pale One had chosen a new vessel. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body refused. The other me stepped forward, placing her hand on my chest. I felt warmth, then cold, then nothing at all. My heartbeat faded like an echo receding down a long, dark tunnel. When the light dimmed, the square was empty again. The villagers were gone. Elier stood at the edge of the mist, fading like smoke. He whispered, "Remember well." Then he was gone too. I looked down at my hands, pale, trembling, but no longer mine. The world shimmered like a reflection on water, and in its ripples I saw the forest, the altar, the faces of those who came before. The fog began to rise again, coiling around my feet like a familiar companion. The cycle had begun anew. I don't know how long it's been. The fog never clears, but sometimes I hear footsteps, new ones, crunching the gravel beyond the gate. A car engine stalls, then silence. I wait. The air hums with recognition. The ritual always begins the same way. A traveler arrives, curious, eager, unaware. Somewhere out there, another camera is already recording. And when they step through the mist, I'll be waiting, smiling, just as Elier once did, because now I am the keeper.